A little bit of quarterback news in terms of the state of Nebraska, not really the University of Nebraska, although it might be. Daniel Kalin, Bellevue West quarterback, 3-star in the 2024 class, has decommitted from the University of Missouri.
Whew.
What does it mean?
Means Dylan Raiola is not transferring to Nebraska.
Oh, does it?
That's what it means.
It is. I mean, it's huge news. You got to believe for Nebraska, and you wonder if they're, how much they're behind this. That's the immediate thought. In Austin, you kind of brought it up right away during the break. Was like, okay, does this necessarily mean Nebraska is the reason why? And maybe not. I mean, North Carolina was pretty high on him. He had them in his final. I think Miami had in his final 5 that he picked from, and Nebraska was not amongst that. But again, all of that was with the backdrop of Dylan Raiola and Nebraska going hard after him. It's fascinating. I mean, obviously, you want to protect the borders. You want to get the in-state kids. But I mean, he particularly comes with a group of pretty impressive players over there at Bellevue West. And, there's a certain time. I mean, heck, 2 weeks ago, you might have said, I don't know if they're going to get any of the Bellevue West kids. With this kind of news, and hopefully it does lead something to Nebraska, you might say, well, they can grab a grand all of them.
Nebraska seems like the most likely option here. I think it has to. But again, I don't want to get my hopes too far up just in case it doesn't mean that. Because again, in-state kid Nebraska, did recruit him, was on him, went after him. And I hope that his relationship with, McMorris and Hall, the two Bellevue West wide receivers, is solid. Because if Nebraska gets the commitment from Kaelin, I would hope those other two would follow. But again, not everything's a shoo-in. Not everything is necessarily, Nebraska's back and we're here to stay. Bo Pelini post Arizona. So it's a good sign, I think, for Nebraska. I think that we're one step closer to answering the 25 and 26 quarterback question now. But again, signed, sealed, delivered, please, as soon as possible.
To me, and if you go through his 24/7, recruiting profile, he has interest from obviously Missouri, Arizona State, Colorado. I'm only going to read the places that have offered him a scholarship according to 24/7 Sports: Colorado, Duke, Florida State, Kansas State, Miami, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska. Oh my gosh, there's a lot. Maybe I should stop. Okay, no, we're good. Rutgers, Vanderbilt, Virginia. Those are the schools that have offered him a scholarship. Schools that have shown interest after that: Iowa, Iowa State, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Wisconsin. But out of those schools that have offered him a scholarship, to me, the only reason he would decommit at this time would be because Nebraska missed out on the commitment of Dylan Raiola. They shifted their priority, shifted their focus onto Danny Kaelin, and I don't really know what they told him or what I don't want to say promises, but what they told him to get him to decommit from a place where I did not think he was leaving based on the tweets and everything that he'd been posting about Missouri, the fact that he'd gone on another visit down there and talking about this is home and everything a couple weeks ago. I didn't think he was decommitting from Missouri at all. Didn't think there was a chance in heck that Nebraska would get him to decommit. And again, not saying Nebraska got him to, but in my eyes, that's the only school that makes sense for him to decommit from Missouri at this time. If
it's Nebraska, this decision to me comes because Daniel Kaelin wanted to go here all along. That's what makes sense to me. Because I think, as the competitor in him would say, yeah, I'm just as good as Dylan Raiola. I can be just as good as him. I might even be better. But I think if you look at the ratings, you watch any film, you understand the human part of you, why Nebraska would go after this other kid. But if you're willing to decommit from Missouri, that tells me, number one, that you wanted to come back home all along. And I don't think you're coming back now just because you'll feel like a priority all of a sudden. To me, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Matt Rule and the staff did a good job of making Daniel Kaelin feel like as much of a priority as they could have given the circumstance. If they just treated him like some other quarterback from out of state, talked to him here and there, not kept in contact, let him go, whatever, he probably doesn't decommit. He probably stays with Missouri. But to me, the fact that he's still, decommitting from Missouri, and again, we've seen crystal balls in favor of Nebraska already, just a few minutes in from the decommitment, that to me, reading between the lines, says the coaching staff did a good job of staying on him and making that relationship feel strong and genuine, even though they were targeting someone else as well.
Well, it's interesting too because I think that I've kind of battled with the idea when you're Matt Rule, you step in, you've got a great class all of a sudden in 2023 and 2024, but particularly for this 2024 class, it's like, okay, well, but you didn't have a whole lot of time to develop relationships with them, and so you kind of give the new staff a pass, and there's nothing you really do, but just in your head, give them a pass on maybe missing out on some of the top talent in the state. Like you said, whatever delicate balance that he was able to do, because we talked about it. It's not a secret. It's basically brought up and brought up on the text line every time you talk about it. Is like, how do you make Daniel Kaelin feel wanted when he's obviously not the number one option? And whatever they did, and however they've done it, has been, incredible. I just kind of written Kalin off the board just because of how much he's been peer recruiting at Missouri. You can see it on his Twitter. He's always talking about come home to some of the players and have a little tiger emoji or something.
Zoo or whatever they call it.
That's good too. I mean, if Nebraska does get him, some quarterbacks are kind of, like maybe full of themselves, whatever, or just not necessarily a peer recruiter. He could be a guy that if they do bring him in, like we said, not only could bring in the Bellevue West receivers, which naturally you might want to play with him at the next level, but start to get some of those other guys like Williams Dewar. That's a guy that had an interest in Nebraska and Missouri. And he's been, he kind of tweeted when Williams Dewar kind of talked about potentially visiting Missouri. So, this could be huge. Again, like Austin says, you don't want to get too excited about it, but at the same time, you know what? It's May. We don't have football for a few months, so it's something.
We're gonna talk about it.
Let's get excited anyway.
We're gonna talk about it. And the big thing you talk about peer recruiting, although he's not of the same caliber as Dylan Raiola, he's still a very not highly ranked, but his skill set fits really well for a lot of other players. Just you see the numbers that he puts up at Bellevue West. You see the athletes that he plays with and how he makes them look good, at Davon Hall and Isaiah McMorris, how they're, highly rated as well. That makes people want to play with you. And just getting a quarterback really in whatever type of recruiting class really helps to peer recruit. I understand that there are other positions that can, everybody can peer recruit. Everybody can do that. But just knowing that you'll have, like, this is going to be your quarterback. This is the guy that you're coming in with. And when he starts to play, you start to play, you guys are meshing and you have all that going together for you. And you can just see, like, this is going to be the future of this program and I'm going to be with him. I think that really helps Nebraska and should help Nebraska going forward, building their 2024 classes. Just having, again, we're just, guessing since he decommitted. Again, if you hadn't heard, Daniel Kalin, the Bellevue West quarterback, class of 2024, 3-star quarterback, decommits from Missouri. And we're just saying that he's going to go to Nebraska. Again, we don't know. We're just guessing. He could go somewhere else. But if Nebraska were to get him, I think that would really enhance their chances of getting some of those other high-level players, just for the fact of having a quarterback in your class.
Well, the other interesting note for him, too, is he is a pro-style quarterback. And Nebraska, obviously, this last spring, when they made I don't want to say the cuts, but when they went from 6 quarterbacks to 3, more the pocket types left campus, and you're left with 3 dual threat quarterbacks. And again, with any athlete, it's kind of hard to tell. Some guys are stone feet. They're not going to move around in the pocket. Some guys can kind of move despite being labeled pro style quarterbacks. So I don't know how much of that, it kind of factors in, but I think it's kind of interesting. Kamari McClellan, the other quarterback that they had kind of circled and kind of looked at and is, I think, still planning on visiting in early June and haven't offered quite yet, also a pro style quarterback. So there's somewhat of a narrative going forward that they're only going to be getting a running quarterback, and what would they do if Dylan committed or whatever. But I think they're definitely looking for a quarterback first, more so than an athlete.
And I think the running quarterback narrative has been out there because that's what they've said, but that's also what they have on the roster.
Right.
I think this is a coaching staff that when it came in said, we will take a look at guys, see where they fit best, see how we can best use them. And I think when Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield sat down and looked at that quarterback room, they saw a lot of athletes. A lot of guys that can move. It's like, okay, we're going to use the quarterback run game. Mm-hmm. Again, think about how they've described Jeff Sims. He's not a running back that can throw. He's a passer that can also run. They bring that up about Jeff Sims when we're all talking about the run game. Like, yeah, we'll use it, but we want to develop him as a passer first. So my guess is they aren't fully bought into a running quarterback scheme long-term. if they find the best guy out there for them is a running quarterback, they'll work it in. But I still think this is going to be a, more pro style first, where the legs are secondary, used, but not focused on.
Going on Daniel Kaelin's 24/7 sports profile, Alan True, national recruiting analyst, wrote this about Daniel Kaelin's athletic ability. First off, his projection is a Power 5 starter, and his comparison. Ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
And don't take these like too
Trevor
seriously.
Lawrence.
No.
Andrew Luck.
Joe Burrow.
You got another one?
James Winston.
You guys are going way too. Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins. Hey.
Connor Cook.
I would accept Kirk Cousins.
Derek Carr.
Okay, whatever. Alan True writes, national recruiting analyst Alan True, back in March. Smart, accurate passer who had his first year as a full-time starter as a junior and was very productive. Took good care of the ball with an over 5-to-1 TD to interception ratio. Shows the ability to anticipate and throw into windows and throw his receivers open. Solid to good arm strength. Very effective as an intermediate passer. Throws it well enough down the field to keep defenses honest, but would not be currently classified as elite in velocity category. The same with his athleticism. He can move in the pocket and does a nice job of throwing on the run, even when it is back across his body. Can run when needed, but is not a true running threat. So I think that kind of goes along what you were saying, Austin, where they'll use the quarterback run game when they need to, but in terms of using it as their main source of offense, that's going forward, that's not really what they're trying to do.
Kirk Cousins is an interesting comp. I had to look up his stats. He threw for 9,000 yards in college, 64% completion rate, 66 touchdowns to 30 interceptions, 146 QBR. Fine, solid, pretty good. Michigan State had some success. What if we go Brock Purdy? Not just because, Mr. Irrelevant and everything did with the Niners.
And
Brock
his
Purdy,
brother is here.
right? Brock Purdy in college threw for 12,000 yards, 67.7% completion, 81 touchdowns, 33 picks.
Well then,
I take that. I sign up for that.
Yeah.
It never threw double-digit picks in a season. Brock didn't. So
that would be a nice change of pace.
I mean,
wouldn't it?
He did throw 3 against Iowa in one game, but
well, that's an elite defense.
Well, yeah, that's right.
That you face in the Big Ten is the problem.
You're right. So Daniel Kaelin, again, he started his first year as a junior. So his first year starting as a true starter was this last season, where he got up to a 3-star and with all these Power 5 offers, passed for 3,186 yards and 36 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions this last season for Bellevue West. And like Bach said, he's got a duo of teammates who Nebraska really wants to have here in Isaiah McMorris and Davon Hall. 2 very athletic, very talented wide receivers. I think Davon Hall took 3rd in the high jump this year at state track, jumping over 6 feet 6 inches, or jumping right at 6 feet 6. So you get somebody like that. You get Isaiah McMorris, who is a 3-time back-to-back state basketball champion. He wasn't, a star on any of those teams, but he was there, and he did play a vital role this last season for Bellevue West. His first 2 seasons, he was at Millard North and won there. So you get 2 guys who are supremely athletic. If possibly you can get Daniel Kaelin, I'm not saying that if you get him, you get them, but there is a connection there where you keep the teammates together. You keep the wide receivers catching passes from the same quarterback through high school. I mean, that would make you feel a lot better about landing those 2 talented wide receivers out of the state of Nebraska.
Again, you start, if you're in Nebraska, with Daniel Kaelin. Get him in the fold, get a quarterback in the class, an in-state guy that might have some untapped potential. Then, once you get him signed, you tell him to throw the ball to those 2 all year. Go back on everything your coaches tell you to do. Just get the ball to those 2 guys. Make them happy.
That's it.
Pump up their egos. Bring them to Lincoln with you.
Well, I think the way that they've kept in contact with, obviously kept in contact with Daniel Kaelin more than likely, but the way that they've kept pushing things with Davon Hall and with Isaiah McMorris, and the fact that I think Isaiah is coming for another visit here shortly. However, Davon hasn't. We talked to Brian Munson the other day, and I think he said Davon hasn't visited Nebraska in quite some time. I'm thinking that might change now with the decommitment of Daniel Kalin and the fact that they're still in conversations with those 2 wide receivers and getting Isaiah to come back for another visit after he had gone out to USC for a visit. And that's a big visit to follow up. Yeah. That should also help. And I know you say focus on Daniel Kalin. Obviously you should do that, But I believe that the contact that you've kept with the wide receivers and the way that you've built those relationships up with your new wide receivers coach might actually help going into getting Daniel Kaelin, because you get those wide receivers, possibly you get those guys, they talk the quarterback into following them, or vice versa.
Well, and Sean Callahan was on early break yesterday too, or 2 days ago now, and was kind of saying, with Hall and McMorris that, it seemed a couple weeks ago that they were, kind of fading. But he gave credit to Garrett McGuire for getting Nebraska back in the mix of things, and says they're squarely in the picture for him. So now you look at McMorris again, just following what Callahan said there. Southern Cal, like you said too, Rico, probably the team to beat there. Is the offer committable? That's one thing to kind of look at. Davon Hall, maybe, Callahan said maybe Arkansas team to look out for there. So I mean, it is the level of the talent in the state. It's no longer beating out Kansas and Kansas State and Missouri in this case, which it can still be at times. But you look at the McMorris and like a Carter Nelson, if they were able to get the top 5 guys in the state, which I would say Carter Nelson, Hall, McMorris, Kaelin, they already have Ashton Murphy. I mean, you can argue at number 5 or whatever, but if they can get how much would that do? Not just with the connection with this Bellevue West, the lost connection to Omaha. Maybe it's more prominent in basketball than it is in football, but it would be huge in that topic. But I mean, it's the whole fading of the program that we've been talking about. Is these kids, they didn't grow up with Nebraska being great. In fact, you think about when they started paying attention to football, it was probably slightly after Ndamukong Suh was here. So, I mean, they probably didn't even, get to live out, and I don't want to speak for them. It depends on when your football fandom starts, but you're in that kind of territory. So it's not the same where it used to be where, if you're committing to Nebraska, you're committing to one of the top programs in the nation. So to get these guys, and it wouldn't just be, hey, it's the top 5 guys in the state. It'd be, these are legit national prospects, not just a couple local teams want to take a look at them.
Breaking news on the Isaiah McMorris front. He tweets 2 eyes emojis.
Yep.
Hey,
quote tweeted the decommitment from Daniel Kaelin with 2 eye emojis. You see another quote tweet on Jalen Lloyd, GBR.
Okay.
The track star and Husker football / track signee Jalen Lloyd, fresh off of a double dip of championships at the state track meet of long jump and triple jump, and I believe a 2nd place finish in the 100, tweeting GBR at the Missouri decommitment of Daniel Kaelin. And so you were talking about getting the top 5 guys in the state. It's kind of like that 2018 class where Scott Frost came in, re-recruited some of the guys after Mike Riley got fired, got Cam Jurgens. I see I have to go through here real quick just to make sure I get everybody correct. Give me 1 second while
don't miss anyone. Don't be disrespectful.
I don't want to. Was it that 2018? I thought it was that 2018 class. Could have been 2019, where it was Cam Jurgens, the 2 players out of Burke. I don't know why I'm missing out on these names right now.
Well, Henrich was from Burke, and Hickman.
Henrich and Hickman, who were both nationally recruited. And there was another one. Oh, Garrett.
Yeah.
Nelson.
Yeah.
So it was like that class, although it doesn't look like they were in the 2018 class. They might have been in the 2019 class. Yeah, Garrett Snodgrass. All those guys, just getting those top guys out of the state of Nebraska. I think it was 2018, 2019 class, both of those. But Cam Jurgens was in that 2018 class, being recruited highly, a 4-star tight end, the 193rd prospect in the nation, number 7 tight end number 7 tight end in the nation. And re-recruiting him after Mike Riley got fired and being able to keep him, and then obviously switching him to center, that was a big get. And that's kind of like what you're talking about, is keeping the top guys in the state. And it hopefully looks like that might be what Matt Rule and company are trying to do with Daniel Kaelin's decommitment from Missouri. Oh, sorry. So many words.
But it's a big deal.
It is. In case anybody missed it, as I just said, Daniel Kaelin, Bellevue West quarterback, 3-star quarterback in the class of 2024, decommits from Missouri. This coming on the heels of Dylan Raiola's commitment to Georgia, Nebraska having to switch things up in their quarterback search front for the class of 2024. A guy that I personally thought was probably ungettable for Nebraska after his commitment to Missouri and the peer recruiting and the tweeting that he'd been doing about the Missouri Tigers, decommits, and Nebraska's right back in it.